She stormed onto my land waving a clipboard like it was a weapon. "You can't block this construction. The HOA approved it," she yelled, her sunglasses reflecting the dust rising from my torn-up pasture. I stared at the orange pipes snaking through my grass, pipes they'd started laying at dawn without a word. My ranch wasn't just land. It was my father's legacy, and I'd buried half my life here. "This is private property," I said calmly, but my fists were clenched. She smirked. "Not anymore. The HOA owns the water line now." She said it like a queen announcing new law. Her name was Linda. Everyone in town called her the HOA Karen. She ran the neighborhood board like it was her personal kingdom. And somehow she thought my 40-acre ranch was part of her little empire. A bulldozer engine roared behind her. One of her hired contractors, probably didn't even know they were trespassing, revved up like he was proud to destroy something. My old cattle fence shook under the machine's weight. I took out my phone and started recording. She noticed, laughed, and said, "Go ahead. It's legal work. The water board approved it." That's when my son came running from the barn, dust on his boots and fire in his eyes. "Dad, they're digging near the well." I froze for a moment. That well was our only water source. They were connecting their pipeline right into my supply. "Ma'am, you can't," I started, but she cut me off with a finger snap toward the bulldozer. "Keep going," she shouted. And then, right there, as the machine tore into the earth, my son whispered, "They don't know, do they?" I looked at him, a small smile forming despite the chaos. "No," I said quietly. "They have no idea who owns the source. They built a pipeline through my ranch, but they didn't know I owned the water they were stealing." The next morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy trucks again, this time even closer. Karen had brought more workers, more noise, more fake authority. She stood there in her bright pink blazer, barking orders like she was running a military operation. "Make sure the connection to the main line is secured by noon," she said. "This rancher's done arguing. We have HOA approval." I walked out onto the porch, coffee in hand, watching them tear through the dirt like it was theirs. She saw me, tilted her head, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You can record all you want, but by the time you call your little lawyer, your land will already be part of our water zone." I didn't answer. I just smiled, calm as ever. Because last night I had already checked the county records. The HOA didn't own the line. In fact, their construction was running through my water easement, a right my family secured back in 1968. They weren't just trespassing. They were stealing federal property. When the bulldozer hit a buried pipe, water splashed everywhere. Karen screamed, "Turn it off! That's city water." But it wasn't, it was my well line. The water pressure dropped instantly, spraying her perfect hair with muddy streaks. I almost laughed, but my son's voice stopped me. "Dad, maybe we should call the sheriff now." Karen overheard him and turned red. "Oh, please, you think the sheriff will help you?" "He's on our HOA board," she snapped. But the tremble in her voice said she wasn't sure anymore. I looked straight at her. "Then I guess we'll see who he stands with. The HOA or the man who trained him." Her smile disappeared. She didn't know what to say. The workers looked at me, confused. I turned, whistled for my son, and walked back toward the barn. Because she didn't know the truth, before I retired, I trained half the county's deputies. She tried to threaten me with the law, not knowing I taught the law. By noon, the air was thick with heat and tension. Karen wasn't backing down. She'd called in what looked like law enforcement. 3 SUVs with flashing lights rolled up the dirt road. The workers stopped. My son tensed beside me. "Dad, those aren't county vehicles," he whispered. She strutted over to me, her fake confidence shining brighter than her pearl necklace. "You're officially being investigated for obstructing HOA operations," she said, holding out a paper that looked like a citation. The seal on it was crooked and the signature looked printed. I took it from her, read it slowly, then met her eyes. "This isn't real," I said quietly. "You forged a county notice." Her smile twitched. "You think anyone will believe you?" "These officers work with me." The men stepped closer, hands on their belts, but something didn't add up. Wrong uniforms, wrong badges. I knew every real deputy in this county, and these weren't them. My son took out his phone and started recording. Karen noticed and shouted, "Put that away! No filming, too late." One of the fake cops pushed him back, rough enough to make my blood boil. I stepped forward, voice low but sharp. "Touch my son again and you'll regret it." The leader of the fake cops tried to posture. "Sir, calm down," I cut him off. "Calm down? You're impersonating law enforcement on my land." I turned, raised my phone, and said, "Smile for the real sheriff. He's about 5 minutes away." For the first time, Karen's mask cracked. She froze, eyes darting between her fake cops and me. "You're bluffing," she hissed. "No," I said, watching the dust rise at the end of the road. "I called him the moment you stepped onto my property." And just as I finished, the sound of real sirens filled the air. Karen's face went pale. The fake cops backed away slowly, pretending they'd finished their job. But when the real patrol cars arrived, everything turned quiet. Sheriff Daniels stepped out, his hand resting on his holster, eyes narrowing at the scene. "Ranch looks busy today," he said. Then he looked at me. "Heard someone was impersonating my men." Karen tried to speak, but her voice cracked. This is all a misunderstanding." I handed him her fake notice. "Then maybe you can explain this." She brought fake cops to scare me, but I trained the real ones who arrested her. The sheriff's team spent hours questioning everyone. By evening, the fake cops were in cuffs and the bulldozers were gone. But Karen, she was still standing there glaring at me like I'd stolen something from her. "You think this is over?" she said, brushing dirt from her blazer. "You might have fooled them for now, but the HOA will shut your water off permanently. You'll be begging us for a drop." I didn't answer. I just walked toward the busted trench where her crew had tried connecting to my well. The pipe still dripped into the soil, my clean water spilling for no reason. "Funny thing, Karen," I said without looking back. "You're the one who's been stealing my water." She laughed, high and sharp. "Not for long. The HOA is installing a new main line. Once it's done, every property in this area, including yours, will be on our meter." That's when my son stepped closer. "You mean your fake meter?" he said. "We found your little pump house behind the clubhouse. You've been selling people their own water back to them." Karen's smile flickered, then vanished completely. "You have no proof," she snapped. "Oh, we do," I said quietly, holding up a small USB drive. "My cameras caught everything, your crew, your fake permits, your secret valve. And guess what? I sent it to the state water board this morning." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She just stood there, trembling slightly, eyes darting around like she was calculating her next move. Then she said, "You're making a mistake. You don't know who I work with." I stepped closer, voice low enough that only she could hear. "No, Karen, you don't know who I work with." The sheriff called out from behind us. "Mr. Hayes, we'll need a statement tomorrow." "Sure thing, Sheriff," I said. But as Karen got into her car and sped off, I could feel it. She wasn't done. People like her never quit when they're cornered. That night, while I was locking up the barn, my phone buzzed with an alert. "Motion detected near the well." I checked the live feed and froze. Karen wasn't alone this time. She had 2 men with her, and they were carrying fuel cans. She couldn't steal my water, so she came back to burn it all. I ran out the door before the second alert even buzzed. The gravel crunched under my boots as I grabbed the shotgun from the truck, not to shoot, just to scare. By the time I reached the well yard, I could see their flashlights moving in the dark, faint glints bouncing off the steel casing. Karen's voice cut through the wind, low and furious. "Pour it there. Make sure he can't use this well again."
"He wants a war?"
"We'll dry him out." I stepped from the shadows. "That's enough, Karen." The men froze, but she didn't flinch. "You have no right to this water." "The HOA owns it now." I clicked the flashlight on and pointed it straight at her face. "You said that last time. Sheriff's records say otherwise." One of her guys panicked, dropped the fuel can, and it spilled over the dirt. The fumes hit instantly, sharp, heavy. I kept my voice steady. "Walk away or you'll end up spending the night in county again." Karen's jaw clenched. "You think you've won? You don't even know where your water comes from." That line stuck with me, the way she said it, like she knew something. I watched her retreat, her car tires spitting gravel as they sped off down the road. The next morning, I drove out to the far edge of the property, to the old creek bed my father used to talk about. The spring that fed my well started there, and as I followed the flow upstream, I saw something that made my stomach turn. An HOA construction crew, building a control valve right over the source. They weren't stealing my water by accident. They were redirecting it from the mountain itself. I stood there staring at the pipes, the machines, the arrogance of it all, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. I pulled out my phone, opened the contact list, and tapped a number I hadn't used in years. "Hey," I said when the voice answered. "It's Hayes. I need that old water rights contract from 1971. and maybe a favor." The voice on the other end chuckled. "You found another fight worth starting?" "Not starting," I said quietly. "Finishing." She tried to steal my well, so I bought the mountain that feeds it. 3 days later, the entire town was buzzing. The HOA had gone silent. Karen hadn't been seen in public, and everyone kept asking the same thing. Why did the water pressure suddenly drop across all their properties? I didn't say a word, because I knew exactly why. The moment I bought the mountain spring, the ownership transfer gave me legal control over the entire underground flow feeding their pipeline. Every drop that came through those HOA faucets was technically mine now. And when I had my crew close the main valve at sunrise, the HOA's fancy fountains, lawn sprinklers, and swimming pools went bone dry. Karen finally showed up that afternoon, storming down my driveway in her spotless SUV like she was still in charge. She didn't even knock, just slammed her car door and yelled, "You shut off water to 200 homes. That's a federal offense." I stayed calm, leaning against the porch rail. "No, Karen, it's called private ownership. You built your pipeline through my land, connected it to my spring, and never paid a cent. You wanted control. Now you have none." Her voice cracked. "You can't do this. I'll call the state board." "Already did," I said, tossing her a folder. And they confirmed what I already knew. "Your HOA permits are forged. Every inch of that pipe will be dug up by next week." She flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. You can't ruin me like this." I stepped closer, my tone colder now. "You did that yourself when you broke into my property with fake cops." Her eyes flicked up, full of fear and hate. "You don't understand who I'm connected to." "This isn't over," I smiled. "You're right, it's not. Because I'm not the only one you stole from." Right then, a truck pulled up behind her. The sheriff got out with 2 state water agents. One of them held up a warrant. "Linda Jacobs," he called. "We have a few questions about your permits and your off-the-books pump houses." Karen looked at me, realizing this wasn't just revenge. It was justice catching up. She built her empire on stolen water and drowned in her own lies. Karen's arrest hit the local news like wildfire. By evening, every channel was showing footage of her being escorted out of the HOA office in handcuffs, her perfect hair undone, shouting that it was all a misunderstanding. But the evidence spoke louder. Fake signatures, illegal pipelines, and years of billing families for water that didn't belong to her. Neighbors started showing up at my gate. Some brought coffee, some just wanted to say thank you. Turns out they'd all been bullied by her in one way or another. Fines for mailbox colors, threats about lawn lengths, even towing their cars for violating HOA image standards. I thought it was just me. Turns out, Karen had turned the entire community into her personal kingdom. A week later, the town held an open meeting to discuss dissolving the HOA. Karen wasn't there. She was still under investigation, but her lawyer showed up, trying to defend her. He started talking about water rights confusion and administrative errors. I waited until he finished, then stood up, holding the deed to the spring. "This isn't confusion," I said, my voice steady but loud enough to echo in the hall. "This is theft. She built her fortune by draining the source of every home here, and when she couldn't control me, she tried to destroy me. But I didn't fight back for revenge. I fought back so no one else would ever be afraid to stand on their own land again." The room went quiet. Then slowly people started clapping. First 1 or 2, then everyone. Even the mayor nodded, saying, "Mr. Hayes, I think the town owes you a debt." Outside, the air felt lighter. The HOA signs that once hung over the gates were being taken down. My son looked at me and smiled. "Guess she finally learned who owns the water, huh?" I chuckled. "Yeah, but something tells me she's not done scheming yet." He frowned. "You think she'll come back?" I looked out toward the mountains where the spring shimmered under the setting sun. "People like her always try, but next time we'll be ready." She tried to control the town through my water. Now the town drinks free, and her empire's bone dry. The day everything finally settled, the ranch felt different, quiet, clean, like the land could finally breathe again. The trenches were filled, the pipes removed, and the spring water ran clear and strong, untouched. My son was fixing the last section of the fence when he stopped, looked at me and said, "Dad, you ever think Grandpa would have believed all this?" I smiled faintly. He'd have laughed first, then told me to stand taller. We both laughed a little, but there was still something heavy in the air. I walked over to the well, dipped my hand into the cold water, and thought about everything it took to protect it. The lies, the threats, the fake cops, the late-night fires. All because one person thought power meant ownership. That evening, as the sun burned orange over the hills, a car pulled up quietly at the edge of the road. A familiar one. Karen stepped out. No makeup, no sunglasses, just a plain gray coat. She didn't walk toward me, just stood by the fence. I didn't move either. Finally, she said, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Her voice was smaller now, like the fight had finally left her. You did mean it, I said. You just didn't think you'd lose. She looked down, swallowed hard. They dropped me from the board. Everything's gone, I nodded once. Good. Maybe now you'll understand what it's like to earn something instead of take it. She didn't answer, just turned back to her car. Before she left, she said quietly, You won? I shook my head. No, Karen, the land won. After she drove off, I stood there for a long time, watching the wind move through the grass. My son joined me, leaning on the fence. So what happens now? He asked. I looked out toward the mountain, the source that started it all, and said, Now we protect it. Not just for us, but for everyone who forgot what freedom really means. And for the first time in a long while, the water from the spring sounded like peace instead of war. They tried to buy my silence with my own water, but this land speaks for itself, and it'll never run dry.